Good evening. Good evening. What is going on, everybody? Coach Mike here. Echo audio. As I was echoing here when I had my music on or my audio on, Coach Mike here. We're going for another office hours, and today's topic is going to be longevity and high performance. Now, this came up not just from a random thing. I actually also fun plug really quick. You can vote for a topic every week. In case you guys want to have a particular topic. We didn't have a specific topic come in this week. So what I did was I used some AI deep research, and I thought there were some interesting components to the suggestions from AI. And I want to share immediately why I'm actually picking this topic. 57% of people globally now prioritize aging well more than they did 5 years ago. So to me, that's just impacting our overall quality of life, i.e. longevity and performance. Hence why this is the topic. And because we're going into a new year, we're going into 2026, now more than ever, figured this would be a relevant breakdown. Now, the cool thing is, if you're watching this and it's another year, it's not the new year, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter what time of year this is. There are going to be 5 daily habits that you are going to be able to utilize no matter what. And these are things that I personally do, and myself and my team coach here at LOF, and that we've seen success with replicating in a variety of capacities. So just a little heads up on what we'll be covering. And again, to give you a preview of the 5 habits, so it's not crazy. And if you watch all the way to the end, I'm actually going to be highlighting some products and some different things that you can have, some different things you can shop. But the cool thing is you don't have to actually spend money on any of this stuff. I'm going to give you strategies you can do right now, taking away from the live stream, or if you're watching the replay or you're listening to the podcast, or you're consuming this, you're going to be able to take things away. So number 1 of the 5 is moving daily, finding joyful movement on a daily basis. Number 2 is eating for energy, not just for pleasure. Number 3, being able to sleep and have sleep being used as a committed precision tool. Treat it like you would treat any other meeting that you don't reschedule. Just like you show up to work, you want to show up to this. This is probably one of the most impactful things that you can actually show up to on any given day. Then number 4 is going to be stress management. Either you're going to manage your stress, or your stress is going to manage you in a variety of ways. And then lastly, the tools that we can use to track and measure all of this. Because the theme is, if you can't measure it, you're not really going to be able to manage it. So we're going to go over again strategies around all 5 of these. And I'm a big data guy. I'm a big numbers guy. Hopefully, if you've ever watched or listened to any of my content before, you know that. So I'm going to be citing different data amongst all of this as we go through it. And the other piece is I like to include references and citations. So if you want to see all the references and citations to what I'm going to be bringing up today, you can go to our blog and be able to look at, once we have the blog up, I'm actually going to have all the citations and references and a cheat sheet that goes along with this. So number 1, let's look at moving daily. And again, to pause here, all of these are going to be things that you can do without spending any money. Okay. These are things that you can just do inherently right now. The caveat to this, though, is you'll be able to have different things you can invest. I'll highlight different products, different tools, different services along the way. And we'll get into that at the end. Plus, bonus, if you guys are watching this live, the first person to comment on any one of the platforms, you get a $50 LOF gift card. So on TikTok, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Amazon, on LinkedIn, on each individual account, if you're the first person to comment, take a screenshot, send it to my email. I have the description, or I have the details in the description. You'll snag that $50 gift card. If you're watching a replay and no one has commented for whatever reason, you can be the first one. If you're watching a repurposed version of this and no one else has commented on it yet, comment, screenshot it, send it to our email. I'll hook you up with that $50 gift card as well. So that's pretty much just going to be the theme for pretty much probably the rest of the year. Going back to movement, moving daily. And the reason I use words like joyful and activity and joyful movement are very important, because to me, if you're forcing things, it's not going to be very sustainable. It's not going to last for a long period of time. And there's a time and a place where we may want to use things that are uncomfortable. Yes, totally has a value, totally has its place, totally has its presence. But realistically, for the longevity side, for the sustainability side, you want to find things that you're going to enjoy doing. Okay. And ultimately, longevity favors consistency and joint health, not punishment. So what I mean by that is not only psychological punishment. If you're forcing yourself to do it, there's going to be a less than likely aspect to longevity, but the physical punishment is not going to lead as much to joint health. Now, we could say resistance training can be quote unquote punishment to some degree, and there is some inherent value to that, but I'm going to frame this in a little bit of a different context to give you guys some ideas of what I mean. For example, I personally love jujitsu. I'm going to be honest with you. However, the interesting thing about jujitsu and wrestling and grappling arts is that's where I've actually acquired 90% of my injuries. Now, that doesn't mean I don't do jujitsu or I don't grapple. I still do, but I've kind of mitigated the volume at which I'm training. Again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong for anyone else. For me, I've just found, again, an experiment of different aspects. Where I'm at in this season of life, jiu-jitsu is really taking place at most once a week. Realistically, it's probably taking place 1 to 2 times a month as far as live classes, live roles. I'm drilling on a daily basis. I'm doing solo drills. I'm still doing like studying, film, and all of that. Similarly to Muay Thai and martial arts, I'll maybe spar once a month, if that, and I'll hit the bag. I'll do shadow boxing, resistance shadow boxing. I'll do that on a daily basis. The point of me highlighting that is I enjoy jiu-jitsu. I enjoy Muay Thai. So I enjoy those. Those are my joyful activities. That's why I lean towards them. I also really enjoy, honestly, resistance training and strength training. So I lean on that on a weekly basis. My least favorite thing, though, if I'm being honest with you, is cardio. So when I say cardio, I really more specifically talking about the traditional side of like running and long distance endurance training. I actually don't mind doing swimming based activities. I don't mind doing shadow boxing, jujitsu. Those are really actually fun for me. And that's an aspect of cardio we can leverage, but again, finding joyful movement. And then the other aspect that we're going to mix is mobility training. So 3 key areas that we want to look at when we're talking about moving daily is strength or resistance training, is cardiovascular training, and mobility training. Now, again, you have to do that every single day, but being able to do one of those 3 main core areas on a daily basis. And people always ask, well, what should my numbers look like? How much time? Realistically, I say start with 2 to 5 minutes. I know that probably sounds crazy to everyone if you're not familiar, but the idea is we want to rewire our brains and build habits, right? Now, when we talk about specifically for longevity and performance, these numbers are going to look a little different. It's usually going to be about 120 to 150 minutes of more intense activity on a weekly basis, preferably leaning towards 75 minutes of high intensity training and 150 minutes of low to medium steady state type of activity. Now, again, you could do a hybrid of that. You could do more, you could do less. But those are some of the targets we can anchor towards. And where am I pulling these numbers from? This is actually pulled from a couple of different like federally oriented organizations, as well as more global based on peer-reviewed journals and studies. But ultimately, the theme is first start with what feels accessible. So I say start with 2 to 5 minutes. I will reference, again, back to a couple different studies that highlight for rewiring our brain chemistry and our behavior patterns, it's more effective to do 2 to 5 minutes on a daily basis than it is to do 2 hours once per week, to rewire the habitual pattern of our brain. So I want to let that sink in. Again, 2 to 5 minutes daily, more valuable to rewire our habits and our brain than it is 1 session, 2 hours per week. Again, just let that sink in. Now, you don't need harder workouts. You need replicable ones or repeatable ones you can do again and again and again. So if you're just killing yourself for, again, 2 hours a week and you can't do it for a whole nother week, that's not really going to help with the behavior pattern. Now, there are some studies and there are some things that can show, hey, if you go really intense for a period of time, you will see strength gains, you will see some adaptations. This is getting more into the nuance in the weeds. What we're really highlighting today is the longevity and sustainability habits and behavior patterns. So what I mean by that is you don't have to go super hard. That was something I get to continuously work on. Even to this day, my temptation is to go really, really hard, and I want to be super sore and feel it, right? And I want to be able to burn a bunch of calories and eat a bunch of food and do the extremes of it because that's what feels good for my system and my mind. But honestly, from a longevity perspective, I've paid the tax. Even as now a 38-year-old, from going through a career of fighting, I have shoulder injuries, I have hip injuries, I have knee issues, I have back issues, I have neck issues. Now, I've also, because of these strategies, mitigated a lot of the tax I pay on those injuries, but they still show up. And I know in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I'm going to continuously pay taxes on this if I'm not mindful. And that's why resistance training is important for joint health, for bone density, for attaining and maintaining muscle mass, because after the age of 30, we're losing anywhere from 3 to 8% of our muscle mass year after year if not doing anything about it. So being able to have strength training, be able to have cardiovascular training. I personally look at VO2 max as a key measurable, and we're going to talk about measurables towards the end here on what are the things you can pay attention to, whether it's, again, a VO2 max test, whether it's just different types of training. Personally, I've been loving what's called a 4x4 Swedish training style. I believe it's Swedish, but the 4x4 VO2 max training style, which is you do 4 minutes at zone 5. So that's like, for me, 38-year-old male, it's 164 beats per minute or more. That's my zone 5 VO2 max style training. So I'm trying to keep my heart rate at 164 or more for 4 minutes. Then I rest for 4 minutes, or I do a low intensity activity, and then I repeat that for 4 rounds. So it's roughly 30 minutes of total activity for the high and low intensity volumes. And I do that about 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week, depending on how I feel. Then I'm plugging in about 3 resistance training sessions a week, and then 1 to 2 martial arts training sessions a week, specifically dedicated. And sometimes there's an overlap. Sometimes that VO2 max training is actually martial arts, where I'll just literally do like bag work, or I'll do resistance shadow boxing specifically for VO2, where I'll do a hard 4-minute round, hitting the bag, whatever, and then resting, or do a hard live round for 4 minutes and then rest and repeat that. So that's where that's about 5 days worth of training right there. Okay. It's usually about 40 minutes total, 45 minutes for each of those. So that's 200 minutes, give or take. And then I like to add in at least 1 session that's like lower activity, a hike, a long walk. Like I did one today with Hope Bear. I also did actually some lower body resistance training, which was kind of unique. I was just kind of feeling good. And then being able to work in on a daily basis. I don't even do one long session. I do on a daily basis mobility every single day for 5 minutes. Really, 2 minutes is my bare minimum, but for up to 5 minutes, that's my non-negotiable. And again, the idea here is pain-free movement. That's what we want to create. Pain-free movement equals freedom. Because again, if you've ever had to say, oh, I can't do that, it hurts, or I'm restricted, it's not a great feeling. It's not how we want to live. So that's like the category number 1 that's going to fall into play with all of this is number 1 is moving daily and finding ways to move daily that feels sustainable and consistent. And I say that to say some of the things, and personally why I actually push bands so much, why I'm such a proponent of resistance bands. I got my LOF, the short bands, I got my long bands, and all of these pieces. Why I'm such a proponent and why I'm so big on them and an advocate for them is because the data shows that they work in this category, not only for joint health, for priming our system as far as our nervous system, for priming our muscular system. That's hilarious. But also being able to set ourselves up for warming the tissue and having dynamic movement. So you're getting the most out of your list when you do these things, and it adds longevity to it as well. Knowing that, it's just one of many options. You can have, again, whatever resistance training you want. You could do calisthenics, you could do dumbbells, barbells, you could do CrossFit. It doesn't actually matter as much when we talk about, yes, if you want to get into the optimization weeds of things, like what's the absolute best specifically for one specific, like let's say skill or sport, we can get into the weeds of that. But really from a longevity perspective, as long as you're moving, right? That's what matters on a daily basis. And also, if you're not just moving in one category, you don't want to just be moving weight. You want to be able to cardiovascularly challenge yourself. You want to also have mobility in your tissue. And really, the last thing I'll highlight when it comes to this moving category is the difference between mobility and flexibility. Mobility is being able to actively move your muscles and your tissue and your body through a range of motion with control and strength, while flexibility can be more of what I would consider a passive type of a dynamic. Or, okay, someone can like move my arm to this degree, but it's not as quote unquote functional. Now, again, I'm paraphrasing a maybe true textbook definition. If you talk to a PT, if you talk to let's say a specialist in that area, they might have some different words they want to use, but that's like more or less the categories that we want to like look at there. And again, I'll just highlight, I use these strategies because they remove excuses and ultimately allow me to train on a daily basis in the environment I have, and even train pretty much anywhere, because I'm not making it to the gym as much the way my schedule's set up, having kids, all that stuff. I'm not really going into the gym. I'm not necessarily doing it in other environments. I'm doing it from home. I'm training from home. And really for 2026 and for this year ahead, I'm predominantly 90% of my training is going to take place with bands, body weight, and things you can do at home. And I'm going to show you guys what's possible as far as body recomposition, strength building, and all of that. So it kind of removes the excuses, as it were. And again, this is a season of life that I'm in right now. I know in another year and a half, once Hope's a little bit older, kids are in a different spot, we have another home where we have more space and certain other aspects of things, it's going to look different. But just keep in mind finding longevity in all of this. So that's number 1. That's the movement category. Finding ways to move. Start with 2 to 5 minutes on a daily basis. The goal is to build up to either 75 minutes of high intensity training on a weekly basis from a cardiovascular standpoint or resistance standpoint to 150 minutes of a lower or moderate resistance. I'm doing about those 200, maybe 250 minutes per week. So that's 4 hours, give or take. It's about 45 minutes a day. I'm doing that 6 days a week. One of those days is going to be a little more or less. I give it about an hour a day total between the warm up, the cool down, and the transitions into stuff like that. So it's going to be like 7 hours. That's an extreme. I don't expect everyone to be able to do that. It is a worthwhile investment to build towards. But even if you can do like 200 minutes a week, that's massive. Even 150 minutes a week, start with even 75. That's massive. Number 2, eating for energy versus pleasure. And also not feeling restricted in this. A big temptation for a lot of people when it comes to our nutrition is the temptation to restrict or the temptation to remove. It's like, oh, well, I shouldn't eat this. I don't want to eat that, or I can't eat this. Realistically, what we want to do, or what I've found most successful and what becomes most impactful for people, is being able to find what can you add? What can you add to your life to impact that quality of life, to make it feel more appealing, to make it feel sustainable? Because longevity diets aren't going to be extreme for the most part. They're going to be these simple X's and O's, the tactical things that you can replicate day in, day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, season in, season out, whether it's Christmas or not. Like, I'm going to give you some of the baseline things. Looking at some of my personal favorites is protein intake on a daily basis, fiber intake on a daily basis, and overall fruits and vegetables. Those are some standard things. Again, we don't have to count calories. We don't have to become hyper obsessed with numbers, but there are things we're going to want to measure and then ultimately manage. And again, when I talk about measuring and manage, at the 5th category, I'm going to talk about the tools and some more strategies around that. Okay. And I'm just kind of highlighting here some of the stuff. So if you guys are watching on the channels where I have like shop options, I'm also going to be highlighting some of the products related to what I'm talking about. So you can shop it and you can go back, circle back, and I'll be chopping some things up from there as well. And if you're listening to this or watching in the future, I'll have a link in the description where you can go to our shop, whether it's on TikTok or Amazon, and you can just go through the products and see like where they fit in and where they make sense for you. So again, another interesting principle. So we got protein we want to pay attention to, fiber, and I'll even go into why those become important. Both of those, and then when we also think about, again, fruits and vegetables, all 3 of those become impactful for a lot of value in our intake. Protein is going to be impactful, obviously, for building muscle. If you work out, you can work out all you want, but if you don't have adequate protein intake, you are not going to be able to build the muscle that you want or recover properly and optimize your performance. If you don't have proper fiber intake, you're going to probably be hungry more often, and you're not going to be able to like maintain your body composition unless you're purposely trying to put on weight. And even then, fiber becomes important because fiber also will have an impact on your gut health, on your microbiome. That's another thing we want to pay attention to. And I can go into the weeds on why that's important. If you guys have questions, let me know. I'll gladly speak to it. But that's really like a topic for another day. But know that fiber is going to help your gut health. It's going to help the bacteria that's in your gut and what is or is not thriving, as well as keeping just your GI like health and all those tissues and these systems running effectively, as well as honestly, both protein and fiber is going to help your satiation, feeling full, not overeating, which is going to simultaneously help your overall weight and your body composition. If you have too much body fat, you're not going to live as long. Just in general, we know that, right? If you're even just heavier, even if it's all muscle, you're more than likely not going to live as long. So being able to have fiber and having adequate protein will not only help from a body composition, total weight perspective, but also the type of body weight that you have. The leaner you are, the more muscle you have. In general, the healthier you're going to be, the longer you're going to live. And in addition to that, having fruits and vegetables, having 5 to 7 portions a day and servings a day is going to help with vitamins, with minerals, with the nutrients, the micronutrients that we need to help keeping our body running. It's not just our macros, the proteins, the fats, and the carbs. That's like our energy sources. Those things help dictate what type of body composition we have. The micronutrients are going to dictate how our system's actually running. If our cells are replenishing, if there's energy properly distributed, where that's going. If we have healthy healthy hair, skin, and nails, those types of things. If our energetic system's optimized, if we're going to be susceptible to, let's say, disease, or if our immune system's functioning properly, our brain function, our electrolyte balances, this is also going to be impacted by our micronutrients. And fruits and vegetables, produce in general, is going to be one of the best things we can pay attention to. And in general, I'm a big fan of, you see a bunch of supplements behind me. I have supplements, I'll leverage those, but we want to foundationally look at our nutrition first, and then supplementation is the last 10 to 20%. Kind of speaking of that, it's mindful with these things. It's going to help stabilize our blood sugar. We know if you have insulin resistance, that's not going to be great, right? It's ultimately leading to potential diabetes or just other health risks. If you have insulin sensitivity, it's equated to quality of life and just a reduction in comortality in a variety of ways. So any risk of death, it's going to go down. And I'm going to cite some numbers here coming up in a little bit that talk about this. And then lastly, 80-20 is going to be the long-term play. So basically 80% of the time we want to be adherent to our plan. This goes back to the measurable pieces, not just in nutrition, but almost all of this stuff. Plan to be adherent 80% of the time. 20% of the time, traveling, getting sick, life comes up, whatever, it's going to be okay. But 80% of the time is going to set you up for success. And the thing I want to leave you with is an important line or a quote that I kind of like saved for myself is, your body isn't broken. It's underfueled and overstimulated for the most part, or simultaneously it's overfueled and understimulated. So it's a balancing of fuel and stimulation, right? So you're not broken. No one's broken. No one needs to be fixed because we're not broken. We just need adjustments, right? We need some fine tuning. You need either to lower your fuel intake because you have too much. You need to up your fuel intake because there's not enough, or you need to increase your stimuli or lower it, meaning move more or move less or change what's coming in. And that's going to be impactful for, again, your health, longevity, body composition. And before we kind of move on, this isn't directly related necessarily to food, but when it comes to stimuli, this is something I talk about, I present on. So I'd like to think I'm somewhat uniquely educating condition for speaking to this, is when we're taking in too many screens and too many digital devices, we are setting ourselves up for potentially a lowered quality of life, more ADHD-like symptoms. I would do, sorry, Carrie's got to walk by. Yeah, I would go that way. Being able to have, again, mindful relationship technology, because the more you use technology, screens and those types of things, the more there's an interesting correlation to ADHD-like symptoms. And that also doesn't mean we may have ADHD just in general, but don't you notice over the last like 15 years, there's an interesting rise in ADHD along with technology? Again, I'm not saying it's causation. I do think though it's an interesting correlation, especially someone that now has presented on this topic for 2 years. And I'm not just saying presenting to no one. Like, I've literally been paid to present to Harvard University on this exact topic, paid to present some of the biggest organizations and corporations on this topic. And this is something that routinely comes up. And speaking of which, if you just heard Carrie blowing her nose and running the sink, that's why you want to pay attention to your nutrition. Carrie could probably speak to this. She's been having more sugar lately because she's, I don't want to say depressed, but would you say you're just overwhelmed, underslept? And maybe that's leading to some depressive things. All of the above. My point of saying that is I was just talking about nutrition is the 5 habits we're talking about. 1 is movement, 2 is nutrition. 3 is Carrie walking into the shot in a row. 4 is sleep, stress management, and managing these things. So we're going to go into actually sleep. So here's number 3, sleep. Carrie can talk to this as well. So nutrition and sleep and stress are all going to come together on this one. Carrie's a perfect example. She's 7 months postpartum? Yeah, 7 months. 7 months postpartum. And I'm like doing my best to tag in this state. But honestly, I've even been writing to myself, I can step my game up to help tag in and support Carrie because like she's burdening a lot of this stuff. My point of saying this is if you're a parent, which is a lot of the people I speak to and create content for, this is an important time to pay attention to your sleep. So protect your sleep like it's a performance tool. Carrie, I'm looking at you. Protect your sleep like it's a performance tool. Okay? Instead of thinking, oh, let me drink coffee in the morning, be more strict. And this is me talking to myself here. Being more strict with sleep than I am with my coffee intake. Okay. So sleep is the number 1 recovery and hormone regulator that we have at our disposal. Also, poor sleep is going to equal poor fat loss, poor body composition, poor mood, poor focus, also poor discipline. You are more likely to want to eat sugary foods when you are sleep deprived. You get less than 7 hours of sleep on a routine basis. Guess what goes up? Your ghrelin production. Ghrelin production is a hormone and neurotransmitter that's related to your hunger cues. When you're sleeping less than 7 hours, Carrie, or any parent out there, probably myself included, like even actually last night I got like 7 hours or 7.5 hours. Let's check. And this goes back to measurable tools. I'm going to check right now for my sleep. And some people may not want to wear wearables. Like Carrie's not a big fan of wearables. Yeah, I actually got 7.5 hours last night. Also, and Carrie's craving sugar like crazy. Now, if you think about it, it makes sense. Hey, if your energy is reduced from a sleep perspective, your body's going to make up for it by having more calories or caffeine cravings or stimulant cravings. Sugar is just the easiest one to access. So that's an interesting lever. Your body's going to produce more ghrelin. That's your hunger cue. It's going to make you more hungry, give it more instant calories. The downside is if you eat more calories and you're not moving as much, what do you think is going to happen to your body composition? You're going to gain weight. More than likely, it's going to be fat. So that's just something to keep in mind. From a, again, fat loss perspective, body composition perspective. Now we talk about mood. Serotonin is related to mood. Now, also, this goes back to fiber intake and our gut health. 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. So taking care of our fiber, our nutrition intake is great, as well as our sleep is going to help manage and regulate that hormone or that neurotransmitter production, as well as some of the other functions of our gut and help stabilize our mood. If you've ever been sleep deprived before, being a parent, you know this. Or if you've just read any kind of studies on how they torture people, they sleep deprive them, amongst many other things. Also, poor focus. If you are getting less than 7 hours of sleep, you're more than likely not going to perform as well from a cognitive standpoint. Also, your physical performance is going to go into the garbage. What's ironic about this is think of who's mostly sleep deprived. Doctors, law enforcement, military, firefighters, parents. If you think of those roles, aren't those some of the most important roles that you want to have your brain and that you want to be able to perform and that you want to be able to like regulate your mood, have your brain online, have a healthy body composition? Again, everyone wants those things, but especially for like doctors, medical professionals, law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, parents. These are the type of things that like we get to prioritize sleep. Now, this is also assuming it's easy for me to say, we don't have control. Like Carrie just put Hope to sleep. We don't have control if she wakes up in 10 minutes or 2 hours, right? What we do have control over is how we manage our time in between though. Meaning, am I going to drink a bunch of candy, sugar, and caffeine stuff right now? No, especially if I want to go to bed. But let's say you're already overstimulated. And Carrie could probably relate more to this. We have things, I'll talk about the tools later, but like you have like, again, teas that you can drink, patches that you can have, supplements you can take, foods you can take that can help regulate your circadian rhythm, that can help regulate your energetic system or downshift it, even breathing techniques, different types of timing to your exercise. There's all things you can do, again, to help protect and stabilize our sleep. Even activities, again, going back to TV and screen consumption, not consuming screens. One of the things I like to do is lately I've been reading a lot of books. So Becoming Enlightened, I actually just finished this book. The Spelling Bee Champ. Shout out to my homie, Matt Stone. I actually just ordered 2 other books from him, but I'm working my way through this one. Then also shout out to my other buddy, Rob King. Stewarding your finances. My point is I'm just highlighting different books right now, but being able to read books instead of listening to Audible or watching on a screen or watching shows, be able to read instead, especially if you have a hard time falling asleep. Being able to use, like I've been enjoying the Daily Stoic Journal and having my planner. We're going to talk about some of this in the stress management side too. But my point is having strategies. What are you consuming? In nutrition it's the only area we consume things, right? We consume food, but also from a media perspective, we can consume things. So it's kind of ironic, right? I'm making content with you guys on digital platforms, hence I'm telling you to get off them, but being mindful of how you're doing this, right? So even breaking this up, do 20 minutes, then come back. You can come back. You don't have to watch the whole thing live. Pause it, come back to it. Being able to be mindful of, again, what you're putting into your body and protecting your sleep as it's a precision tool. Like you take care of your car, take care of your sleep and your rhythms around that. Like we're going to even be traveling to New York in the next couple of days for Christmas to New Year's. We're also going to be bringing, I'm going to be bringing magnesium, and we're going to be bringing some melatonin, some different things to help leverage our sleep using certain tools. I'm not going to be going out till 2 a.m, hanging out with my friends, even though it's super tempting to go see my buddy Rob. Shout out to Rob's on 12, my homie Rob, or Bob, as you would know him in the village of Manhattan. But I'm not going to be going out till 2 a.m. because that's going to mess with my sleep cycle, and it's not worth it at this stage of my life. If it is to you, then you have to figure out ways you can sleep in at least to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And especially if you're an athlete or a high performer, 8 to 10 is really the move. So anyways, again, I talked about some of the aspects around that. You can wear sleep masks even. You can have blue light blockers, whether it's glasses or different things you put on your phone, white noise machines we have. We're going to be bringing again to New York and using these different things as well. Again, These don't replace habits. They just reduce the friction around it. And again, I'm also a big fan of not removing things. If you like TV time, if you like listening to Audible, if you like podcasts, if you like all that stuff, do that. But in addition, what I say, add instead of removing. Same thing in nutrition, exercise, all these pieces. Add reading a book, add journaling, add a planner, add in, if you're going to watch TV for every 20 minutes or an hour, add 15 minutes of reading, add 15 minutes of journaling. So you're not removing anything, but you're creating a buffer for yourself. Add in some time where you're not watching screens. Don't remove the screen time yet. Add something instead. Same thing for food. I love peanut butter cups. I'm not going to remove that from my life. What I am going to do though is I'm going to add homemade protein enriched peanut butter cups, which I made the other day in a live stream. You guys can watch that. They're actually sitting in the fridge right now. I totally had some earlier today post-workout. They were delicious. So being able to be mindful of how we add things. That's number 3. And again, to recap, we got move on a daily basis, look at nutrition as a source of energy and not restricting yourself and keeping it in mind for performance, and sleep, being able to stay adherent to it as a precision tool for your performance. Number 4, managing your stress or it will manage you. Carrie, we could speak to that. I can speak to that big time.
Yeah. Managing, like basically I feel like the best way to manage your stress is to set boundaries.
Ooh, so yeah, Carrie just said a great way to managing stress can be creating boundaries. And it's not just with other people, it's with our relationship to a variety of things. And I'm going to get into that as well. But being able to also look at stress by itself isn't the enemy, right? It's created for a reason. Acute stress is actually quite helpful to be able to, whether it's on a movement side, it stimulates our body to grow. If it's from a psychological side, it's something that we bring our attention to create an adaptation around. But chronic stress, no bueno. That's where it starts to have a really snowball effect in a variety of ways. But acute stress can be really helpful and a great indicator. So again, high performers are going to help have systems to regulate their nervous system. It doesn't mean we're never going to have stress. It's just how do we deal with it? And not removing stress, it's adding strategies on how we deal with stress coming up, whether it's using breathing techniques, being able to have exercise timing, being able to meditate, having visualization, again, journals and planners and different things like that. Even an interesting one, and we have studies to back this, being able to talk with people and share what's going on. That's a fascinating one as well. So again, being able to learn how to regulate your nervous system, whether again, using movement, going back to number 1, that's why movement on a daily basis is another important one. Breathing, again, as Carrie mentioned, boundaries, being able to create boundaries with yourself, with others, and other relationships to different habits. And all of these things are going to be priorities over supplementation, by the way. People think, oh, well, I'm stressed out, or I'm underslept, or I'm under moving. I'm going to take a fat burner that's going to crank up my calories. I'm going to take supplements to make up for the fact I'm not eating enough fruits and vegetables. I'm going to take a sleep aid. And I even mentioned magnesium and melatonin, those types of things. I mentioned that as a potential tool. It's not 80% of the time. It's the 20% of the time. And then also being mindful of, again, I'm not taking supplements just for stress management to help me feel relaxed. Okay, these are tools. We can use them. That's not what I'm relying on. First, take care of your foundational pieces. Move. Look at your nutrition from quality whole foods, not processed. Be able to have good quality sleep. Be able to have fun and joy and socialize. And then you start to turn to supplements and different things like that. So again, stress doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're a human being and you're having a human experience. But from a performance standpoint, we get to learn how to regulate our systems around how we manage it. And again, I'll dive into more of the products related to this, but just to give you some ideas, we can do breath work tools, whether it's like watches, different types of timers, different types of, even like for my daughter, we have a little like rainbow expandable ball that inhale and expand it, exhale, collapse it, those types of things. Foam rollers, massage guns, eye massagers, heating pads. We have journals, notebooks that I've referenced. We can do like even you can swap a stimulant-oriented pre-workout for a non-stim pre-workout to be able to help from managing the anxiety, things like that. And even just certain foods, taking care of our gut health and being able to manage that as well. And having social connection can be really impactful for your stress management. And then last but not least, number 5, track the few things that actually matter. If you can measure it, you can manage it. If you're not measuring it, you're not going to be able to manage it. So you want to find things that you can use to track, whether it's nowadays we have technology, you can track for anything. It can be almost overwhelming. So I do have a smartwatch. I have a few of them, but I like the Amazfit. I like to track not only my movement with this, I also will track my sleep and I'll track my steps and even my stress load. So there's some of the cool things. It literally has a 1-point measuring system. So it'll give me a reading on my one tap measuring. It'll look at my resting heart rate. It'll look at my oxygen levels. It'll also look at my stress load, give me a score there, and check out my sleep. And it'll even help me make adjustments based on if I slept enough, if I'm overtraining. And again, it's not perfect, right? This is just to give us an idea. And we have to put all of our weight into it. We don't want to overanalyze the data, but we want to just have a couple things we're paying attention to. Or you have something like a journal. This is one from Clever Fox. This one tracks finances. It's also picking some key categories like health, business, family, relationships, personal development, finance, recreation, spirituals, like recreational fun, things like that. That can even feel overwhelming. And if it does, you can get it simpler. Like I'm a big fan of the, I have this ADHD growth journal or the Wilkie planner, and it breaks down my days and weeks. And I just kind of like lay things out, have things I highlight from there, or just like a daily stoic journal, having simple prompts, like my evening prompt. Let's see what the prompt was for today. Oh yeah, I journaled this morning. Where have I traded away freedom? How can I get it back? So even just being able to like using journals to track and document and measure things, you can go back. But also this goes back to the stress management side of things. The point is pick a handful of things you're going to measure and pay attention to it and measure it. So the things I'm measuring is my steps on a daily basis. I get at least 5,000 steps a day. My movement, I'm getting at least 20 to 40 minutes of movement on a daily basis. My sleep, my goal is to get at least 7 hours of sleep on a daily basis. That doesn't always happen. 80% of the time, that's the goal. And when it comes to my nutrition, I'm not counting calories as much as I pay attention to my protein and my fiber intake. Every day I get at least 150 grams of protein and 30 grams of fiber. And I'm getting at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. That's why I love the turkey burrito bowl that we make on a daily basis. I literally knock out 3 servings of vegetables in one meal because I have peppers, onions, and then I'm usually working in either peas, corn. Lately, we've been playing with some other different blends, like being able to play with, I think broccoli was mixed in with the last one, carrots, celery, all these different pieces. But the point is, pick a couple things we're measuring and adhere to those things and set goals around them. So for me, in each one of these categories, I have at least one thing I'm measuring. Steps and movement, as well as also total movement for the day, 5,000 steps, 20 to 40 minutes of additional activity. Then when it comes to, again, nutrition, 150 grams of protein, 30 grams of fiber, 5 servings of produce. When it comes to sleep, 7 hours or more. Now, when it comes to stress management, this is an interesting one. My minimum effective dose is 3 minutes of meditation and prayer time on a daily basis. 3 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, and it maybe isn't. But what I found is starting my day with these 3 minutes, I use the Abide app specifically. I found that really impactful. I've played with a variety of meditative tools, prompts, videos, or just breath work. And I like a variety of them. I'll still rotate through them, but Abide is like my baseline. That's like my minimum effective dose buy-in. I was talking before, when we rewire our brain for habits, 2 to 5 minutes is the baseline. That's been an example. I've been consistent now for a year with meditation, and the Abide app's been, I think, of those 365 days, 230 of them or 250 of them have been with the Abide app. I've done other things as well, but that's been really impactful. Okay, so that's the measurable when it comes to meditation and stress management. Another checkpoint I kind of have, or Carrie and I have, is like having at least once a week conversations around our schedule, which also helps to me manage stress. Like Carrie, for example, we're not going to talk about this right now, but I'm going to bring it up before I forget. Gina asked if I could do a promo when we come to New York on Friday to meet with one of the influencers at like 1:00. So we have a health retreat, by the way, y'all, in Joshua Tree, California this February. And we have a handful of influencers that are now joining us, as well as other guests. And we're locking in our chef and our activities and some of the fun stuff. So we're going to start shooting some promos and shooting some more collaborative things. And one of the influencers was asking when I'm in New York if I can do that. So the point is to help manage stress, so it's not a last minute thing. So then I show up Friday morning and be like, oh, by the way, Carrie, you're going to hang out with the kids while I go do this hour-long photo shoot and workout that we didn't talk about. Being able to have like at least a weekly meeting becomes impactful, which we're going to do after this and after I have client calls. So that's when it comes to stress management side, meditation and weekly conversations. And then for the tracking, those are just basically, I just highlighted the things that I track and pay attention to. Now, you don't have to do these things, by the way. You can find your own measurables, but I would recommend find one measurable in each of those 4 categories. Find a measurable around movement, find a measurable around nutrition, one around sleep, and one around your stress. Now, when it comes to sleep, you don't actually have control over if you're going to get 7 hours or 4 hours. What another version of that can be process oriented is, hey, 2 hours before I go to bed, I'm not going to watch screens, or I'm not going to have stimulating conversations, or I'm not going to eat any food, or I'm not going to drink anything. Finding the measurables you actually have control over. So a measurable might be your body composition, and technically you can measure it and you can manage it to some degree, but you don't have direct influence over how much you weigh. You don't have a snap your finger, I'm going to weigh this amount. You have how much food we put into our body. How much weight training do I do? How much cardio I do? Those are the things that are really impactful. Like, how many steps did I take? How much exercise did I get in? For me, how much protein did I eat? How much fiber? So that's why I don't like building goals around my weight by itself anymore nowadays. And even when I work with others, it's good to know, hey, we want to have a certain body composition, but we actually don't set our actual process goals around that. We focus on things we can control. But interestingly and ironically, when it comes to our 100-day coaching, we actually guarantee people a particular result. So typically what we see for people we can guarantee is 20 to 30 pounds of fat loss. And usually that shows up anywhere from 2 to 5% body fat loss in that time frame. Again, depending on a multitude of variables, like where you're starting at, what your life looks like, a variety of things. But the point is, that's the outcome. We don't actually focus on the outcome so much through our coaching. We should focus on the process that we can control. So again, awareness beats motivation every single time. And if you can measure it, you can manage it. And we want to, again, create sustainability in all of this. So this is just a helpful point to mention. These are the things you can focus on and pay attention to. And everything we just talked about is what we build inside the LOF systems and how we coach. We just do it with structure, accountability, and support. And now more than ever, it's accessible. So we use insurance now. I literally just talked to our medical director before. We're going to be updating our application for Aetna. So we'll be able to take Aetna soon, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare. We just submitted claims for them. We're gonna be able to take a variety of different insurance so that if you, let's say, feel overwhelmed financially, you can start to leverage insurance there. If you have an HSA or an FSA, you can leverage that. And if you have these different health incentives, you can leverage those things. So we have everything from 100-day coaching to our retreats to different types of support, our books, our bands, and all these different systems in between. And it's not just, again, fitness coaching. It's a lifestyle system with medically backed credibility and coaching and insight. So it's I'm really proud, honestly, of how we've gotten to this stage, because this isn't really being done anywhere else the way we're putting it together, especially backing it with martial arts. That's my favorite little spin on it, is being able to have medically backed coaching for a lifestyle with a martial arts infusion. And you don't have to necessarily be a martial artist or into martial arts, just know we're using a lot of inspiration from that. So I mentioned having some data points, and I wanted to circle back to each one of these to highlight some data points around this. Then I'm going to bring it home. I'll check to see if we have questions, and then I can always highlight some products related to this if you guys want, but you feel free to let me know in the chat if there's questions around it. So number one, going back to movement. So higher cardiovascular fitness, i.e. VO2 max, is associated with 50 to 70% lower risk of all-cause mortality compared to low fitness levels. So this was pulled from a multi-cohort study or multiple studies around this. And the point, let me break that down for you guys. So if you have a higher VO2 max score, let's say you're at 40, that's a number. That's one of the scores, right? Versus 30, right? Carrie knows. Yeah. The higher your VO2 max score, the lower your risk of dying from pretty much everything is. So that's when we say all-cause mortality, that means from anything that can contribute to your death when it comes to a chronic disease perspective. That's not talking about getting hit by a car, things like that, but all-cause mortality, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, anything related to these chronic conditions, you're going to reduce that by 50 to 70% compared to a lower fitness level. Now, if I gave that to you in a pill, I'm willing to bet you take that pill. Right? If I said, hey, if you take this pill every day, you're going to have less of a chance, 50 to 70% less of a chance of dying from these chronic diseases. You take that. So instead of turning to a pill, turn to these informed things. This isn't super sexy. It's not crazy. It's quite simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. And I'm telling you this works. We know this works. It's at a point now we just get to find out how it's enjoyable to make it sustainable. Another interesting data point, again, I kind of alluded to this before, but muscle mass declines 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30, accelerating after the age of 60 if we're not training. So again, I'm 38 now, so I can potentially be losing muscle mass. But the cool thing is I've been very intentional with my resistance training more than even my cardiovascular or martial arts training. I've actually put on muscle over in my 30s. Since retiring from fighting and not cutting weight as much, I've also played with different medications, different peptides, different things around my hormones and checking my hormones, checking my sleep, my stress, knowing what I'm consuming, not just from food, but maybe like different, things like THC or reducing alcohol, whatever those things are, managing that. So my muscle mass actually is going up, which is a fun little plug for me. And then resistance training 2 to 3 times per week improves insulin sensitivity by 20 to 40%, even without weight loss. So for example, you don't lose any weight. You stay 200 pounds, you stay in the same body fat percentage, but by weight training 2 to 3 times per week, you're reducing your insulin sensitivity. That's the key contributor to, again, diabetes, especially by 20 to 40%. Again, if I could give you a pill, I'm willing to bet you take that pill. So that's why I'm a big fan of, like, again, bands, body weight stuff, dumbbells, whatever you use, resistance training 2 to 3 times per week, 20 to 40 minutes. Start with that. Get your bands in, get your body weight moving. This is impactful data. And again, if you want to check these citations and references, I'm going to have all this up on our blog once we repurpose this content later this week. Okay. So muscle and cardio, just to highlight this, is not just about the looks. They're crucial survival traits, and strength keeps you metabolically young. Cardio is going to keep you alive for longer. So, and what I mean by that is, if you strength train, your quality of life is going to go up. If you use cardiovascular training, the length of your life is more than likely going to expand. That's, again, assuming a couple of variables. You're not eating horrible and doing all these other things that are not so great for your system. But that's, like, again, just some data from the movement side. So now let's talk about nutrition. Now is where it starts to get really interesting and fun. And we talk about protein. This is my jam. As I hydrate here for those listening on the podcast. So number one, higher protein intake, which equates to more than 1.6 grams per kilogram per day, preserves lean muscle mass and improves fat loss, especially during caloric deficit. So that means if you're eating less than what you're burning and you're eating adequate protein intake, you're not going to lose as much muscle. I know that probably sounds obvious to some of you, but I want to highlight this. Now, I just did some fancy potential math conversions here. 1.6 grams per kilogram. For those of you that don't use kilograms, basically just 0.8, 80% of your body weight, specifically your lean body mass. So not your total body mass. This is the easiest way I find it. So if I'm 200 pounds, I'm just going to do easy math here. 20% body fat. That means I'm 160 pounds of lean muscle. I'm going to eat 80% of that in grams of protein. So if I do 80% of 160, let's call that 8 times 10 times 6, 120 grams of protein, roughly 120 and 130 grams of protein. So if you're a 200-pound person, about 20% body fat, 130 grams of protein baseline, that's going to help if you're in a calorie deficit. Now, I eat more than that. And again, we want to be mindful of a couple other factors. Talk to your physician, talk to your healthcare team. That's why we have a medical director along with myself as a health coach and our entire team so that we can set you up for success. But the more protein you eat, you can have upwards of a gram of protein per pound. That's like the gold standard in the bodybuilding world. Once you go past that, you don't need any more than that. But like if I'm 200 pounds, 200 grams of protein on a daily basis, I don't need anything more than that. I'm going to preserve my muscle and build more muscle. So that's an interesting nutritional data point to focus on. And an interesting one I actually saw Dr. Rhonda Patrick talking about on a clip of a highlight. She's a proponent of intermittent fasting, right? And potentially skipping meals related to that. But what the interesting one, she was like, what I am not doing anymore is I'm not intermittent fasting or skipping meals and not adjusting for the protein intake. That's why personally, if you guys have ever seen the content I do, I have right behind me my protein cartons, my pre-made protein. I also use protein powders. Even if I'm fasting, quote unquote, using an intermittent fasting schedule, usually I like 16-8. So 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. In those 16 hours of fasting, technically in the morning, I'll drink coffee and have pure protein or another type of protein brand that's 90% protein, a little bit. So it's not doing the same benefit that it would from a cellular standpoint, cellular regeneration and autophagy. But right, autophagy is the one that's like cellular. I always confuse autophagy and aphasia. But aphasia is for like when you're not eating.
Yes. Autophagy is when the cells eat.
Autophagy is realistically, you don't want anything coming in. So I'm not doing it for autophagy if I'm vegan. Daily, I'm doing it from a metabolic system standpoint, insulin sensitivity standpoint, and caloric control. But having protein intake with my coffee helps my body not break down its own muscle. So I preserve that while also staying in a potential calorie deficit or neutral state. That's an important thing to just kind of remember, in my opinion. Also, for every 10 grams you increase of your daily fiber intake, that's linked to 10% lower all-cause mortality risk. So let me just pause, and I want to emphasize, I didn't know this up until I started doing this thing. Think about that. Every 10 grams you eat of fiber, you increase your total fiber intake. Every 10 grams, you reduce your chances of dying by 10% from other chronic diseases and conditions. So if I'm eating, again, 20 grams of fiber on a daily basis, now I've kicked it up to 30, I've reduced my chances of all-cause mortality risk by 10%. Some days I even go to 40 or 50. I've gone like between 30 and 50 is kind of my sweet spot for fiber. Otherwise, it's just not a fun time in the bathroom for like in the middle of the night. I'm just not doing that. But 30 to 50 grams of fiber has really been a sweet spot for me. So I'm reducing my overall chances of other types of all-cause mortality risk by anywhere from 10, 20, 30% by doing that, which I think is like amazing and mind-blowing. Lastly, from a nutrition standpoint, stable blood glucose is associated with improved cognitive performance and reduced fatigue, even in non-diabetics. So even if you don't have diabetes, if you're managing your blood sugar and your insulin levels, it's impacting positively your cognitive performance and reducing your fatigue. So for example, you ever think about like the food-itis or the itis, right? Being able to not spike your sugar and your insulin levels constantly. Now, post-workout, that's actually a valuable time. You want to potentially spike your sugar and your insulin because it helps with the glycogen absorption. It helps with some of the hormones related to that recovery, but like not before bed, not constantly throughout the day. That's one of the reasons why we even with intermittent fasting, we're not just like housing food once throughout the day. We have like consistent feeding schedules. And even in our 28-day reset and our whole protocol that we're turning into the 100-day plan now that we have in a book that's coming out with it, we kind of look at eating every 2 to 4, maybe 3 to 5 hours to have consistency with that. Not from a metabolic standpoint, but from a blood sugar and insulin response. And everyone's different here too. I will be honest. Everyone's going to respond differently. So it's going to find your sweet spot. And that's why nowadays we have a medical director. We do different types of testing are related to that. That's why going back to measurement, maybe having a consistent blood sugar monitor. Is that Hope?
Yep.
Oh, no, Hope's awake. See, we just talked about this. We don't have control over that. Carrie doesn't have control over that. I don't have control over that. So we just get to manage what we can focus on. Like Carrie didn't eat a bunch of sugar right now. She just drank some water, hydrated, and now she'll be able to tag in with Hope. And then after this, I'll be able to tag in once I finish up with my calls. So ultimately, just to recap it, most people aren't overeating. In general, if you're mindful of it, you're under protein and under fiber intaking, and then you're just slamming yourself on the sugar and carbs. So I guess technically you're overeating from a obesity standpoint, but you're actually under eating in the sense of protein and fiber. You're not overeating where you want to. You're overeating in the simple carbs and sugars, which puts you at a calorie surplus, which is why you're gaining weight. But you're not overall overeating. You're under eating in the key areas of protein and fiber. You're overeating in the categories of sugar, carbs, and fats. If you were eating more protein and you were eating more fiber, you wouldn't have the same weight and body composition issues, as long as cognitive performance and a variety of other things. Now, that doesn't mean if you're in constantly a calorie surplus and you're eating adequate protein and fiber, you still could potentially gain weight. Your body will be able to convert protein into usable energy to gain weight. It's just a lot harder and it takes a lot more energy, and your body's more than likely not going to do it, or you're not going to keep eating and putting yourself in a calorie surplus if you're eating adequate protein and fiber, just from a behavior standpoint. Now let's go on to sleep. Again, as a performance tool and some data behind it, again with the hydration. So sleeping less than 6 hours per night is associated with a 30% higher risk of obesity and metabolic dysfunction. Another aspect to this that I want to share is getting less than 7 hours of sleep is connected to a 400% increase of risk of stroke. Both of those data points are absolutely crazy. Like from a body composition, you're 30% more likely going to be obese and have metabolic issues if you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep per night, and you're 400% more likely to have a stroke if you're getting less than 7 hours of sleep on a consistent basis. Like, so the question is, do you want to be like negatively cognitively impacted and overweight and obese? No, I know the real answer. Obviously not. So if I gave you a pill that said, hey, I can reduce your likelihood of being obese and metabolically dysfunctional by 30%, and I can give you a pill that basically said you're going to 400% less likely be at risk for a stroke, you would take that pill. The difference is you just need 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night, which again, I'm oversimplifying it. Simple doesn't mean easy, but it is that simple. Another aspect to, again, our sleep, 1 week of sleep restriction reduces insulin sensitivity to levels comparable to pre-diabetes. So again, that means if you're like, let's say going on a vacation for a week, or you're in a really super stressful state or you're in a depressive state for a week, and you impact your sleep and you're reducing your sleep. So like postpartum time, right? Carrie and I can speak to Carrie more than me, but for parents out there, if you're like, again, newborns, you're going to be facing this. You're going to be more likely to have a reduction and impact on your insulin sensitivity. So you're almost going to be a pre-diabetic as far as how your body responds to insulin. And again, everyone's different here, but just as a general kind of observation, again, this is just pulling from different studies from the internal medicine journals. These are really impactful things. And then there's other tools we can use, whether it's like, again, I'm going to eat less carbohydrates on those days. If I know I'm getting less than 7 hours of sleep, and one of my buddies who's a great doctor, Dr. Chris Irvine, highly recommend you guys check him out. Got great content. He's great here in Asheville. He runs a great family practice. He's actually my physician. I've worked with him privately, personally, professionally, in a variety of capacities. He's going to be working even with our company as we scale. Another one of our doctors, not yet, but we'll get him there. We'll get involved with that. Point is, we talk about this. If you're, one of the best things he gave to me was like, hey, dude, you're getting less than 7 hours of sleep a night. Don't be tempted to eat the carbs. Pull back on carbs. Don't go heavy training. Don't go high intensity training. Go like light, low cortisol, low stimulating types things. Chill. That's even a day he didn't say this, but this is where where you want to do a little bit more of a fasting, low water, high protein, high fiber, more than you normally would. Also, poor sleep increases cortisol and reduces testosterone and growth hormone, impairing our recovery and our overall ability to lose fat and manage our body composition. So cortisol goes up. That's our stress hormone. Again, there's a reason we have it. I don't want to vilify cortisol. There's value to it at times and places, but chronically having cortisol levels spiked is no bueno. That's not what we want. It's going to have a variety of impact. And then also inversely, our testosterone is going to go down. Our growth hormone production is going to go down. I can relate to this. That's when I saw my testosterone, free testosterone, and other markers in the tank. I was like working more stressed, was maybe consuming too much THC, not sleeping enough, eating a lot of sugary foods. I was training a whole bunch, so that was helping me from a body composition standpoint. But all these other things are really hurting me as well. So ultimately, if sleep were a supplement, it would be banned because it works so well. Like if I told you, let me just recap. Let's just hear me out. Ready? If I had a pill that reduced your stroke risk by 400%, it reduced your chances of being obese and metabolically dysfunctional by 30%. It also reduced your insulin sensitivity from being a pre-diabetic or diabetic, as well as it increased your testosterone and growth hormone and reduced your cortisol. If that were all something you could get in a pill, you probably wouldn't believe that was like a real pill, or you'd be like, dude, that seems dangerous. How can that even be a thing? That's what you're getting when you focus on 7 to 9 hours of sleep or more on a nightly basis. That's the things that you could be getting. It's, again, one of the things we're leaving so much on the table. That's something I've very heavily been focusing on since Hope's been born. It's obviously been trickier, but in the last 3 months, especially, supporting and working on that as best I can for both Carrie and myself. Now, going into stress regulation, our nervous system, this is not willpower. This is just straight up nervous system and our neuroscience. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, going back to the cortisol stress hormone, which promotes visceral fat storage and muscle breakdown. So it's the opposite of the direction we want to go in when we're working towards a body recomposition. If you want to lower your body fat percentage, you don't want to be chronically stressed. You don't want more cortisol in your system, right? That's why walking is a really powerful one. Again, something you don't have to spend any money on, just go walking. Walking is one of the best ways to impact cortisol. Sleep, another free one, doesn't cost anything. Impacts your cortisol levels. Other types of exercise as well, but really walking and sleep are some of the most accessible ones that we can all do, hopefully. And if you can't, for example, I don't want to assume everyone can walk. Some people can't walk, right? We're in wheelchairs. We may have different types of disabilities. Doing some low steady state cardiovascular training. Even I've worked with Parkinson's patients that are in wheelchairs, other types of cognitive declines or maybe disabilities, quadriplegic, paraplegics, doing different types of cardiovascular stimuli that can raise your heart rate, that impacts and lowers cortisol levels. We're even doing brain games, different types of cognitive games, puzzles with our hands. Martial arts is great for this. That's why rock steady boxing and all these types of boxing programs are great for Parkinson's and dementia, Alzheimer's, all these cognitively impacted things. I love martial arts for that too. And that's why I'm such a fan of martial arts, because it hits so many marks. But again, lowering our stress. That's why, again, for me, jujitsu and Muay Thai, huge stress manager. But I'm not always having physical accessibility because I had a shoulder injury, different things can come up, getting sick. Being able to write, journal, read, talk with others, doing different types of brain games, tactile games, Sudoku, puzzles like that. All of this can help impact our cortisol levels. So mindfulness and breath-based interventions reduces cortisol levels by 20 to 25%. So again, when we talk about mindfulness, coming back into the present moment, meditating, being aware of my breath, how slow or fast I'm breathing. One of my favorite ones is 4-7-8 breathing. So we inhale for 4 seconds, we hold our breath for 7, and we exhale for 8. That's one of the most accessible ones. Or a simple version of that is inhale for 2 to 4 seconds, exhale for 4 to 8 seconds. However long you inhale, exhale for twice as long. Another one is box breathing. So inhale for a period of time, let's say 2 seconds, pause for 2 seconds, exhale for 2 seconds, pause for 2 seconds. And you repeat that box pattern for 30 to 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. But it doesn't take a lot, like literally 30 seconds to 2 minutes can be impactful when it comes to our breath-based intervals and interventions, and mindfulness as well. Wim Hof has some great stuff out there as well for different styles of breathing too. Not just that, it's been shown again in peer-reviewed journals and studies. And then lastly, high perceived stress is associated with increased cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. So it's a fancy way of saying the more stressed you are chronically, like my, honestly, parents, I work with like busy corporate professionals and executives. We can relate to this. Even athletes can be in high stress states. That can be associated to an increased cardiovascular risk and all-cause mortality. What that means is, and that's also independent of exercise. If you're not adjusting for exercise, if you're adding an exercise, it'll help mitigate that, which is why athletes don't show up as unhealthy people until usually they retire. But let me tell you, I've worked with a lot of athletes, like hundreds of athletes at this point now. Athletes are some of the unhealthiest people. I know that sounds crazy, but they abuse their bodies. They go through extreme behavior patterns. And then guess what? When they retire, that's when you really see it. That's when you see all the behavior patterns come out because you don't have the same balance or impact of the extremes to help you out. Or on the flip side, it can do the opposite. I've worked with, like, I won't name names, but NFL athletes, once they retired, like linemen, and they've lost 50 to 100 pounds doing our protocols, and their quality of life has just drastically shot up. And we've worked with their doctors in doing this too. So the point is being able to be mindful of your stress and using exercise and different interventions is huge for this. So ultimately, you can't out-train a nervous system that's stuck in fight or flight mode. Even if you use exercise, that alone won't do it in the long term. Eventually, it will catch up to you and you'll be stuck in that fight or flight mode. And that's also why you're probably struggling to sleep. It's probably why you're eating more and you're not getting satiated from it. There's all these things, these ripple effects that come into play. And then lastly, why we're measuring things. I have some interesting data points, ironically, about data points and measurables. So self-monitoring, whether it's steps, food, habits, increases adherence rates by 30 to 40%. So simply just monitoring yourself. That's why one of the things I invite people to do, take your phone, take pictures of everything you're eating and drinking. Don't send it to anyone. Don't post it anywhere. Just literally monitor those things. It will change your adherence level and increase your success rate by 30 to 40%. If I gave you a pill that made you more adherent to your plan by 30 to 40%, you take that pill. So all it is monitoring. That's why steps are impactful, weighing yourself. I'm personally not a big fan of weighing ourselves on a daily basis. I've seen some interesting studies. I used to work for companies. I won't name names, but behavior change and psychology oriented companies. We used to contract with them as well, and still contract with some great medical offices and organizational companies around behavior change and ADHD and things like that. And one of the things they found was if you weigh yourself every day, your weight will go down. The drawback is that's not necessarily super sustainable in the long haul. And it's not necessarily create a super healthy behavior pattern to your weight and your value and your relationship to the scale, but maybe checking your body composition on a weekly or monthly basis. You know, doing a home smart scale, something like that. Not daily, but weekly, monthly. I think that's valuable. Daily steps can be helpful. Daily sleep monitoring. I even go weekly. Every day there can be a lot of volatility in that. Your weight can fluctuate 3 to 5% on any given day, just from how much you're eating and hydrating. Speaking of hydrating. So pick a handful of things you're going to monitor and stick to them. It's going to increase your adherence by 30 to 40%. That's why in the LOF app, we actually have a particular feature where we pick one habit we're going to pay attention to every week and we measure it. And the goal is to be 80% adherent. And just by being 80% adherent or setting that as a goal, people tend to be more successful and adherent in general. So for example, if we have a 5-day workout program, we'll say, hey, of those 5 days, our goal is to hit 3 of those workouts. When we do something like that, we're increasing our likelihood of being successful by 30 to 40% versus saying, hey, I'm going to hit 5 out of 5. You still could potentially be adherent, but the likelihood of you being perfect is less. So that's another just like building off of this. Also, people who track behaviors are significantly more likely to maintain long-term weight loss. Oh, my actual perfect timing. This is a good cue for me. I'm going to have to start to wrap this up because my client is calling me. I'm about a couple minutes over. Let me just tell them. All right, so that's perfect. I'm literally going to talk to my client about this right afterwards. So to recap, because I'm going to start to wrap this up, being able to, again, people who track behaviors are significantly more likely to maintain long-term weight loss. So if you're tracking behavior, it doesn't even have to be your weight, but if you're tracking, again, your exercise, you're tracking your steps, you're tracking your sleep, you're tracking your actual body composition, you're picking a behavior and you're tracking it, you're more likely to maintain long-term weight loss and keep the weight off, which is, if you can keep the weight off for a year, you're less than a 10% group of people that will maintain success, and you'll last significantly longer. As someone that's kept off 50 pounds for over 20 years, I'm telling you, having certain measurables becomes really impactful. Again, not to become hyper obsessive, but to be aware. If we can measure it, we can manage it. And if we have awareness around it, it will lead to action. Simple awareness, going back, speaking of awareness, simple awareness without judgment improves behavior change more than motivation alone, because motivation is fleeting, but awareness. We're not always going to be successful, but if we have this awareness and we're not judging ourselves, because this is the trick, especially someone that has ADHD, and ADHD brains can be more inclined to trying to solve a problem and being judging around it. And then also having other infusions of behavior and psychology that can make it tricky to have negative self-talk. Someone that specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy and want to have positive self-talk, being able to have awareness without judgment, being kind to ourselves, improves our behavior change more than just the motivation by itself. So ultimately, tracking isn't control. It's awareness, and awareness drives action and change and ultimately transformation. So again, awareness will lead to action. Sometimes in the beginning, we're like, I can see myself doing it, but I keep doing it. But eventually you have enough awareness, we can then adapt the plan. So to tie it all together, these aren't just hacks. These are the pillars that ultimately at LOF, we systemize inside of our programs. We systemize inside of our 100-day comeback plan, and that we deepen it and celebrate it in our community and our content at the retreat. For example, in Josh Retreat, when you sign up for our coaching program, you get a pass to our health retreat every year as part of your 100-day coaching program when you do it with us on a yearly basis. The goal is for you to do one health retreat and then, or I'm sorry, 100-day coaching program. You come to a health retreat and then you're good. And then we still have like maintenance coaching, but after that, it's pretty much just sustainable from there. And now more than ever, you can use insurance to cover your coaching. So you can even get a pass to Joshua Tree pretty much covered by insurance, because we have insurance impacting your coaching. So there's less of an out-of-pocket cost, if at all any. 80% of people that are now using our coaching and with this insurance incorporated have a zero out-of-pocket cost for a 100-day coaching program. Ultimately means you have a zero out-of-pocket cost to come to Joshua Tree for 5 days, which honestly, we're charging $1,000 a day, just straight up cash out of pocket if you want to come to that. So that's like $3,000 to $5,000 just for the health retreat, let alone for our coaching and all these things. It's anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 for our coaching on a yearly basis and for our 100-day programs. I'm just gonna be super transparent with you guys. Now, again, now with insurance, it's pretty much covering it. Not all of that. We're working through some of the aspects. So it can cover to almost a zero out-of-pocket cost. Now there's ways, again, different aspects of that. We'll talk to you guys, but just to be super transparent about it. And again, the one thing I want to invite, if you take away from this, pick one habit, one data point, one stat you're going to pull for each of these, from your movement, from your nutrition, from your sleep, and from your stress, and measure it over the next 100 days. Measure it for the next 2 weeks, the next month, and then see how it impacts your life. I can guarantee you will see results if you stick to it. That being said, I'm going to bring it home from there. I appreciate everyone. Again, thank you guys. Again, if you commented, take a screenshot. If you're the first comment, shoot me an email. I'll send you a $50 LOF gift card. And lastly, I will be back. We're going to be live streaming throughout the week, but it's the holidays. So just make sure you're following and subscribing because it's going to be a little bit of an atypical schedule. And again, we'll have the blog post for this if you want to see the citations and references. I don't have enough time to go through all the individual products. I will come back. If you guys want to see that, let me know. I can make a follow-up on this to highlight the products I have in the carousel. I have all of it pretty much behind me or on this desk. But with that being said, I'm going to go jump into a coaching call. Appreciate y'all. And cheers, everybody.